to be transparent for a minute, and I need to say this. I started gardening years and years ago for the simple fact of I was convinced you couldn't tell me any different, that there was gonna be a food shortage and everybody's gonna be starving on the street corners, and that has yet come to pass. And a couple emails lately and a few comments and stuff about a food crisis, and this is gonna be basically if I think there's actually gonna be a food crisis and how you can tell. But I gotta treat my garden with my compost tea that I'm doing first, because the garden comes first. If there is a food crisis and I don't have a garden, then what good is it to try and be prepared for it? So I am not an expert on this by any stretch of the imagination, but this is my second treatment now of compost tea I've been trying, and I figured why not, you know, what can we do? But I see that it's real frothy right now, and apparently that's a good indication that it's ready to go. So I'm gonna go ahead and bottle it up and get it in the garden. All right, so I got my bottle here. This is my sprayer I use, and this is the one I use for everything organic. I've cleaned it out so there's nothing in it. And I've done a lot of research on this compost tea, and I can't seem to find any like solid research about it. And apparently there's not a lot of research about it at all. So I figure why not? It seemed to be easy to make. It turns out it is, if I'm even doing it right. And I'm just gonna add it. What can I lose, right? So there's no research about it, but I use like 6 handfuls of compost in a strainer bag. I put some air in it with an old aquarium pump I had, and then I put, you know, a dollop of fish fertilizer in there. And the idea is that it gets the microbes active, and then, you know, you spray it onto your plants as a foliage feed. You know, it's cloudy today, that's why I gotta do it today. And then you can spray it on the soil too, which is what I really wanna do it for, because it gets that microbial life active. I can't see it, so I don't know, but we'll see what happens. Look, let me break it down like this. I have this garden here. I have 4 garden beds here. I have 5 garden beds back here, and I have a greenhouse. And if you look behind me, now I have stated before that all of this behind me, like I'm standing on a septic system, so it's not ideal to grow in it. But let me tell you, if you start seeing raised beds pop up behind me, boom, 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 all through here, especially from basically the edge of that fire pit all the way around, then I don't even need to come on here and say, hey, look, we need to be you know that I'm worried about it. But for right now and for the foreseeable future, I'm not overly concerned about it. I'm not gonna put that kind of effort into this for that purpose. And if you see that happening, then you know. I am concerned about the weather, and I am more concerned about droughts and stuff like that. I mean, we see historic droughts everywhere, so that is kind of an issue. Now, there is a reason why I may not ever be scared, totally scared of something like that. And I mean, it's because I prepare myself all the time. I mean, look at me. I'm out here trying something brand new right now. I have never, ever even considered doing compost tea, but I read about it. It seemed plausible, so I gave it a shot, you know. I practice all kinds of different methods for gardening that can help me in a situation like that. I mean, for instance, I save seeds. I do multi-season growing. I conserve water as much as I can. And by the way, speaking of which, I just ran one of my 55-gallon rain barrels bone dry, and that is a good indication that there is an issue with water. It's happened a couple times, and every time it's like, obviously it's in a bad drought. But the thing is I don't use my rain barrels often enough like I do to water my garden. I use it for stuff like this. I use it to water my containers. So when I run out of that, you know it's been a while, and I'm trying to compensate for something that's going on with the weather. Doing something as simple as starting or setting up something for some frost protection. You know, I mean, you don't have to buy a greenhouse. I was incredibly blessed to get my greenhouse, but just something as simple as like a low tunnel. like this, you know, setting this up, getting this ready. You know, even if you don't do the whole thing this year, like you get ready, you test it out, you see if it works, try different new techniques. I mean, these are all things that can insulate you from something like, especially if you're worried. I know there's a lot of people that are like super worried about it, but the question I just asked myself, especially when I got those emails and those messages, was exactly what am I doing to protect myself from a situation like that? Not just me, but my family as well. You know, there's more than just me in my life. So, I mean, I'm taking advantage of the warm weather we're having. You know, the climate is obviously, I don't know if the climate's warmer or if it's just a warmer pattern or what. I'm not prepared to say either one way or the other. And I know it's a polarizing subject, but for me, it's like, you know, we're gonna have our first frost date is coming in the next week, and we're not gonna have a frost. We're not even gonna be close to a frost. So that being said, it's as simple as like, let me take advantage of this and keep things going as much as possible. I mean, typically, normally I'll see this plant right here, for example, is very good example of what I'm talking about. If you don't know, now you're gonna know. Those are my Roma plants, Roma tomatoes, that I planted in early August to see if I could get a second fall crop. I've read about it for years, never tried it, decided to this year, but putting the effort into it to keep them going and try and get them to produce, which by the way, we're very close. The last video I said we were gonna get some, the tomatoes were blushing, and they definitely are. So just that alone is gonna help, because now I know next year, let's say that the food crisis doesn't happen, but it gets a little bit worse, and then next year it gets worse, and then the next year and the next year. Well, now I know, for instance, that I can be, if I start my second crop of tomatoes earlier, that I can be canning and eating and saving tomatoes longer into the year than normal. And that's really big, but that's in my area. Your area could be different. You know, I know that there's some areas where spring crops do what we call spring crops, which would be cool weather crops, would do really well all year. And leaning into that and learning how to master those plants, that's gonna help insulate you from these kinds of issues. Now I need to be transparent for a minute, and I need to say this. I started gardening years and years ago for the simple fact of I was convinced, you couldn't tell me any different, that there was gonna be a food shortage and everybody's gonna be starving on the street corners, and that has yet come to pass. Now in 2020, I may have thought we were pretty close to that. I'd never really seen a prolonged period where I couldn't get something I wanted from the grocery store. And let's be honest, most of it was Oreos. Like, I wanted some Oreos. A little bit of depression eating there though, but that's a different story. So that is why I started to garden. And then since then, I've learned a lot. I've learned about the, you know, food shortages and how food's transported and grown for the mass people. I've learned about growing food. I've learned about how much it takes to grow food to feed your family and all these things, and sustainable gardening, which I can't even express to you enough how important that is. I mean, just the simple fact of, I went through my seeds the other day because I'm gonna order some more seeds for next year. And I'm at the point now where I just need to kind of like re-up, and there's some stuff that's too old. And once I went through the seeds and everything that I saved for this year, I was able to take off almost $30 worth of seeds. So, you know, 10 to 12 packs of seeds were able to come off of my list right away because of stuff that I have saved, which what that means is there's 10 to 12 packs of seeds that I don't need to worry about buying now or in the future, because I'll continue to save seeds and I'll continue to save even more seeds. And so that's just part of it, you know? So am I worried about it? Not really. Do I think it could happen? Of course, anything can happen. I mean, who saw a global pandemic coming and everybody being stuck in their house for a while and life being, I mean, it's still jacked up to this day. But like I said, you start seeing all of this turn into raised beds, then you know right there, you don't even have to ask, you know why I'm doing that, because as of right now, I have zero plans to put anything here. And that's for two reasons. I don't want to mess up my septic system because I don't have $30,000 to fix it. 2, I don't want to build out that much and I have enough to take care of as it is. And 3, I want plenty of room for my son to play around, and we use our yard, so we have enough, we enjoy it. There's other ways to get food production going on without having to do that. Am I above it? Hell no. I will put raised beds throughout this yard quick if I have to.